One of the most challenging aspects I find in learning development is measuring the impact. We can be really busy creating what we think are fantastic programs. We can be training lots of people coming through. But if we don't measure the impact or if we don't evaluate the results, how do we know if all of our efforts are even making a difference? And when I work with learning and development or HR leaders to create a learning strategy, we identify metrics in a couple of different places. And I find that I need to really listen for them. It's not like we sit down and identify them, although we might do that. But I find if you listen, they emerge in a few places. So first in the assessment phase. So when I'm interviewing or when the client is interviewing different stakeholders, so maybe executive vice presidents or directors or various roles of learning and development or other stakeholders in the organization, they'll talk about what they hope to accomplish. So in the interviews or even in focus groups. The next phase of the learning strategy process after assessment is the recommendations phase. And here I find, so we've summarized our assessments and we have a report that we're sharing or a presentation deck that the client is pitching. And it's in those conversations with stakeholders that, again, the recommendations, the goals, the metrics will emerge. So it's in the questioning and it's in that vetting or that feedback process that they'll emerge, and you have to listen for it. And then, of course, in the implementation phase, which is the third phase, and that's where rubber really hits the road. So we need to define, okay, what is success going to look like? What's our goal if it's let's say, a 3-year implementation plan? What does success look like at 3 years? And what are the metrics? How will we be able to measure that? And then it's working backwards as well. So 3 years is great, but what does it look like after 2 years or after 1 year? What are the goals or the milestones leading up to that ultimate goal? And what are the metrics that we're measuring along the way? So some examples of goals and their corresponding metrics might be, if the goal is we want to have regular leadership development programs. So let's say you have a learning leadership development program and you offer it once a year, but then you have leaders who are kind of waiting in between that time so that they can start. So if you want to have kind of an ongoing program, that might be a goal. The metric you could use is, the number of programs that you actually offer. So do we offer one a month or one a quarter, or what's the cadence you want to set up? Another goal and metric might be that learning and development is part of your employee brand. So let's say your learning strategy is to really become known as developing and investing in your people, and that's part of the strategy. And so it's part of your employee brand. And a metric that you might look at is when people come in for interviews, whether they're hired or not hired, how many times are they mentioning, well, I part of the reason I want to work here is because I know that you have good training or you have good development opportunities. So that could be the metric that you use to measure that employee brand. And then another one might be, a goal might be to increase your bench strength. So to be able to, take people that have been working in your organization and move them into leadership roles so that you don't have to just hire from without. So that bench strength. And the metric that you might use is the number of internal promotions. So just 3 examples. I know the first one, number of programs offered, might feel a little bit limp maybe in terms of looking at the impact on the organization, but I included it because that's often one that we're most comfortable with. Some of the other ones like internal promotions is more of a business metric, and I think that's where we want to move to as much as possible. So the goals that you have and the supporting metrics that emerge from that learning strategy are going to be what you use to create that implementation plan. And of course, the learning strategy is all to ensure that the learning and development efforts that you and your team are undertaking are going to align with your organization's direction and goals overall.